Welcome, everybody, to a special game day edition of All In with Art Stapleton, New York Giants podcast brought to you by NorthJersey.com and The Record. I'm your host, Art Stapleton, and we are in Pittsburgh, a lovely hotel room on game day. Tonight, back in prime time, the New York Giants, 2-5, take on the Pittsburgh Steelers of Russell Wilson, 5-2, Acrisure Stadium in downtown Pittsburgh, right in that Three Rivers area. Beautiful setting in Pittsburgh. You got the football stadium, then you have the baseball stadium, PNC Park, which is one of the best parks in all of Major League Baseball. So what do you got, Giants fans? What are you thinking? How are you feeling? Well, I know Giants fans, Yankee fans, you're up against it tonight. You got Knicks fans. Your season is now converging. We've got the Rangers. They're converging. Will baseball season end this week? Well, yes, it will. It's just a matter of whether it ends Tuesday, whether it ends Wednesday, or as Yankee fans like myself, hope it ends later than that, hopefully Saturday night or Friday night if they sweep the games in the Bronx with a World Championship number 28. Okay, so let's talk Giants Steelers tonight. And before I came on, I was talking to our producer, Paul Wood. Shout out to Paul. And in terms of where this game feels, it was a weird week for the Giants. You have the Saquon Barkley homecoming. Then you kind of have that extra day to play with because you have to wait until Monday night. So they were in on Wednesday, but nothing on the field other than a walkthrough. Then you have practice Thursday, Friday, Saturday. They travel yesterday, as did I, to come out here to Pittsburgh. Let's talk the injuries first. Here's what I know. Jermaine Illuminor, hip, practiced last Wednesday, then did not practice. Practiced Thursday, and then did not practice Friday and Saturday. I talked to Jermaine on Thursday. He was a full participant in practice on Thursday. Then his hip started bothering him. He said it was more the hip groin area. Wrote a story about Jermaine, and I thought, it was a good story going into this week. Just the idea of going in, playing TJ Watt, knowing Andrew Thomas was out last week, what's going to happen at left tackle. We'll get to that in a second. But I talked to Jermaine about that a month ago when I did a story about his journey to the NFL through London, North Jersey, going to Texas A&M, stopping at Lackawanna Junior College. All that factored in with Jermaine, his time in Baltimore and New England and Vegas, the short stops in Miami. Jermaine's had an unbelievable career. Now, I think what's interesting is that day, Jermaine told me after he practiced, he said he was sore. He said, everybody's sore. We're going to go get treatment after them. And then the Giants wisely kept him off the practice field on Friday and Saturday. He's listed as questionable, but Jermaine told me, and then he reiterated again, that he's playing. He went on social media yesterday. I'm playing. I would expect Jermaine Illuminor to be at right tackle. Now, that he brought up an interesting point, and I never really – you always think that when you're going against a great player and you're in a prime time situation. The point he made to me was there has to be an urgency involved, the urgency of the moment. He said because that ESPN and ABC are going to be circling TJ Watt every time the Pittsburgh defense is on the field. He said, and who's going to be in that circle? He said, me. And who gets embarrassed if TJ Watt does well? Me. He said, so I've got to go in with the kind of confidence that I'm going to do what I can to slow down TJ Watt. It's not easy. It's a tough assignment. They've had a lot of tough assignments on the edges this year so far. Everybody does every week in the NFL. But this was an interesting one. And the one other side note of Illuminor, he's not moving to left tackle right now. Why would you? TJ Watt plays exclusively on the right side over the right tackle. So left side defense, right side offense. And if you move Illuminor away from TJ Watt, that means Evan Neal or Chris Hubbard steps into that spot. You don't want that against TJ Watt tonight in prime time. So now Alex Highsmith on the other side is another very good player, a good pass rusher. Joshua Zudu last week, talking to some players. I don't know if the Giants are just trying to talk it into existence, but they said Zudu, came out sluggish, came out slow, a lot of rust, maybe a little nerves. They felt as though he settled down and settled into the game last week. I'm not buying it. I think Zudu had a rough go. And if he's going to be at left tackle, or I mentioned Chris Hubbard, they split reps this week. I think you're going to see Chris Hubbard. It's just a veteran presence. Is he an elite left tackle in this league? No. Is he a solid left tackle? I guess we'll find out. But I think you're going to see Hubbard there. Even if Zudu starts the game, you may see Hubbard working there after that. So that's the Jermaine Illuminor situation. A couple other things. Brian Burns, he's playing, no injury designation. Dexter Lawrence, no injury designation. He's playing, and that's obviously huge for this Giants defense. Let's size it up a little bit. Let's go offense, defense. Oh, you know what? Before we do that, let's talk corners, because there's a big situation here with the Giants at corner. You've got Adoree Jackson, neck out. Cordell Flott is doubtful with an ankle. I'm sorry, not an ankle, a groin. Trey Hawkins, questionable with an ankle. All three of those guys most likely out. I think you're going to end up seeing Greg Stroman come up as a practice squad elevation. That'll be 4 o'clock today. That's when the Monday night game elevations have to be made. If there are any roster moves beyond that, that'll be made by 4 o'clock today. So here's what I think is going to happen. If you do see Nick McLeod to start this game opposite Deonte Banks, and we'll get to Banks and everything involving Banks in a couple minutes, I think you're going to see Drew Phillips get a shot on the outside on the boundary. And he's been primarily inside in the slot as the nickel. I think the Giants are going to try Drew outside a little bit. Not to be the outside corner and the answer there, but I think they want to see if Drew can handle that responsibility. And his toughness, and he certainly has the athleticism. I want to see Drew there too. So it wouldn't surprise me to see if Drew Phillips plays a little bit on the boundary. And that's notable because there is a lot of feeling that Drew Phillips is only a nickel. And when the Giants were drafting there in that third round, actually in the second round, Lassiter and Kool-Aid McKinstry both went off the board in that spot. They ended up with Tyler Nubin, and then they ended up getting Drew Phillips. There was kind of a knock for some people with Drew Phillips saying, well, he's only a nickel corner. So it'll be interesting to see if he can show that he can do the job on the outside. But don't lose sight of the value of that nickel corner, especially against certain teams in this league. The Eagles are one of them. He did a great job last week on Devontae Smith. So let's see how that plays out tonight. So let's get to Tae Banks, who will start tonight. Whatever internal discipline has been handled from the way he pulled up on that Jalen Hurts scramble at the end of the game. I know there's a lot of talk and a lot of feeling of he should be benched, he should be out for a series, out for a quarter. Look, the reality is the message needs to be sent inside that locker room. The initial message he got back on the CeeDee Lamb play, back when the Giants lost to the Cowboys on that touchdown, was from Jerome Henderson. Jerome Henderson called him out. Tae Banks heard the message, but then last week he repeated a similar lack of effort on that play. It's unacceptable. But first off, don't use Banks as the example that, well, this is going to be everybody. This was one guy. yes, you need to nip it in the bud. You need to make sure that this does not become part of this culture here where guys start quitting, guys start showing no effort. That brings me to the column I ended up writing that posted today. When you look at Brian Burns and Dexter Lawrence and what they're playing through, and Jermaine Illuminor and what he's playing through, the message comes from within. The message for Tae Banks comes from Dexter Lawrence. It's unacceptable. And I like what Dexter said this week. He said, when you see something like that, you address it. Now, this isn't Dexter or Brian Burns or anyone else in the locker room pulling Tae Banks aside and trying to make an example of him. Everybody knows. They see the film. The eye in the sky doesn't lie. Everyone saw this. There's no hiding. This isn't something that Tae Banks did away from the team. He did it and everybody saw it. So the idea isn't, well, maybe if I don't accept blame for it, people won't come after me. No, it's not happening. But I thought it was interesting that Lawrence said that they addressed it as a defense and as a group. And the idea that they didn't necessarily single out Tae Banks. They used that as an example, but they talked about what they needed to do to make sure this doesn't happen. And that, yes, that is a reflection on Brian Daboll and the coaching staff. Of course it is. You can't have players quit. I personally don't think that it is Daboll and, well, look, this guy quit, so now this is a problem with the thing. No. We know the vote of confidence came this week from John Mara, saying that no changes will be made during the season with Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll, and they will move forward. If you've been listening to this show, you know that I've said this from really week 2 or week 3, when job security questions started coming about Brian Daboll. They are going to be here. They need to build this up. They need to give them time. They are not incompetent. They are not looking at what is going on and saying, well, we need to panic. I know the questions have come. Will Deonte Banks, should he be benched if the Giants had more depth? If there weren't these injuries, would Banks be benched? And I honestly don't think so. I really don't. I don't think that the Giants are sacrificing punishment for not having a guy at corner. I don't think that's true. I think Daboll handles things the way he wants to handle things. And I think they believe that Banks made a mistake, and they believe in who he is as a player. He wasn't a player that came in with a reputation of quitting in college. He didn't show that last year. Now you give him an opportunity. Now remember, look at the Banks performance the week after the CeeDee Lamb criticism against DK Metcalf. And now you get a similar situation tonight. I would imagine he travels with George Pickens of the Steelers. This Steelers passing attack is nowhere near the passing attacks that the Giants have seen so far this year and shut down. The Eagles, the Bengals, the Cowboys, at least with one receiver, the Vikings earlier this year. They have seen the Seahawks. They have seen teams who can really spread them out and attack them through the air. I don't think that's the way Pittsburgh is going to attack this defense. So, no, I know the question came from that great tailgate in K-12. Paul telling me that's Paul's tailgate. And I honestly, that's what I believe. I don't believe – if Daboll believed that Banks needed to be benched, Banks would have been benched. I think they look at it as a young player, made a mistake, and now they have to try to correct it. Now, was it a similar mistake that he made against the Cowboys? It depends. You want to link it up and say effort. It was effort. It was effort. It's two different things. A guy pulls up on a scramble versus a guy gives up a play, maybe thinks that he's getting safety help. Nubin had a challenging angle, took a bad angle on it, and that's how A.J. Brown scores against the Giants. So Banks is out there. You know he is going to be in that circle that Illuminor talked about. This will be a topic on this game. And Banks has to show that he wants this badly because it hasn't been an easy year for him. It hasn't been a terrible year, but it's been up and down. And I think right now his performance is not as good as Banks thinks it is. I think he needs to change that. He's the best corner on this team, but he's not a lockdown corner. Not yet. Still a young player and needs to avoid these kind of situations that only drag his reputation down. And I think that'll be a very interesting thing to see how that plays out tonight. So, like I told you, Drew Phillips, I think will get more playing time tonight. I think you're good with Burns and Dexter Lawrence. Still on the inside, want to see what they do. Can they find a way inside? And now I'm forgetting who the guy is on the inside, the defensive tackle that they signed, who was released from the Patriots, and now they signed it, was a draft pick of the Minnesota Vikings when Andre Patterson was there. Now I've got to look up and see if I could find it, unless Paul can find it first. But so bear with me. I'm looking on the Giants roster to remember his name because, got to be honest, this is really the first time that I think he's going to play tonight. So we will see. And as I call this up, I will let you know. Let's see. I think you end up seeing Matt Hawk will be the punter again tonight because Jamie Gillen is again out. Let's see. Armon Watts. There you go. Armon Watts, defensive tackle. Giants have him. He is on the active roster because teams around the league, this is the time of year where they start scouring the practice squad for depth at key positions. And appreciate it, Paul. I know you tried. Getting there first, but I have it queued up on my phone. So we got Armon Watts. It's interesting. He started his career in Minnesota with Andre Patterson. So Andre Patterson saw him available, talked to the front office, and they're bringing him in now. The Giants' run defense last week when Dexter Lawrence wasn't on the field was very bad against Saquon Barkley. Hate to bring it up again to you, but that was the reality. So we'll see if they can do better. Pittsburgh wants to come out and pound it. But here's another thing. Pittsburgh is going to want to go over the top. And this gets to this game. The Giants are going to try 4 to 5 plays to get chunk plays, to get explosives, as Brian Dable said. They haven't hit any in the last 2 weeks. Longest play, 14 yards last week against the Eagles. The week before against the Bengals, longest play, 15 yards. The Steelers and Russell Wilson will take a ton of shots downfield if they're given the opportunity. Now, one, that has to do with the Giants' pass rush. You got to get after them. But number two, it's really the best thing Russell Wilson has going in his game. There are a lot of questions with Russell. Intermediate passes. Is he really going to take off and run the way he used to? I think that if the Giants could take away those deep shots, that they have a good chance at keeping Pittsburgh really under their thumb. The Giants' defense has played well, save for a couple performances this year. Minnesota, Philadelphia. This defense has been there every week. If you don't give up big plays against Russell Wilson, you can contain him and you can contain this offense. And now Justin Fields is questionable to play tonight, so there's really no situation where you can see Fields come in and be kind of that running quarterback. The Giants have to watch for that, obviously, because Russell in his past has been a running quarterback. But if Russell, when he's scrambling, Russell wants to throw deep. And the Giants need to know that. You need to be able to play deep. Safeties can't necessarily come up because they're going to try to hit you over the top. And for the Giants, the window is very small. The margin for error on explosive plays is very small. That's why the criticism has come from Daniel Jones throughout this season. He's missing plays that all you got to do is hit one or two. Look at the Cowboys game against the Giants. They hit that deep shot to CeeDee Lamb, and it changed the game. They don't hit that play, and the Cowboys' offense is essentially pedestrian. But you can't play games like that. They're going to go for shots. That's like looking at an NBA game and saying, well, they hit too many three-pointers. No, it's not part of the game. You've got to guard it. You've got to defend it. And if you're taking a lot of three-pointers in the NBA, you got to hit them because they changed the game. I'm not trying to pour salt in the wound on the Knicks from opening night, but look at opening night against the Celtics. The reality is if you take 5 or 6 deep shots in a game and you hit 2 of them, odds are those 2 plays will get you in the end zone. Maybe not on that play, but it will get you to the point where you're not feeling like you have to go 12 play drives, 13 play drives. And that's where the Giants are at with Daniel Jones. That, my friends, is the reason why, more than anything else, now injuries play a part, but why the Giants will upgrade at quarterback, or they sought an upgrade this past season. That is the reality. They need to hit these plays. And Daniel Jones's percentages of hitting those plays are extremely low. I don't know if you can improve them. I don't know if Daniel Jones can. I don't think he can. He's gotten enough opportunities to do it. And I think Brian Daboll knows he needs a quarterback who's going to hit on a higher percentage of explosive plays. It's why he was so complimentary of Russell Wilson. What did he say about Russell Wilson today? Not today. For this game today, earlier this week. Explosives. You cannot win in this league without hitting a couple explosive plays a game. It's very hard to win consistently with an offense that needs to grind it out. Can you win? Sure. But it's usually far between. Daniel Jones, back in prime time, 1-14 career in prime time. I said this a couple weeks ago. Go to northjersey.com, find my story. I broke down every game. It's not all Daniel Jones' fault. The Giants were double-digit underdogs 5 different times. When you look at games that they should have won in this primetime streak, there are a lot of them. Tampa Bay at MetLife Stadium, at Kansas City, the Eagles in Philly. There's 3 of them right off the top. And you wouldn't be talking about this streak. The biggest one, the only win, was the Sunday night game against Washington that essentially paved the way for the playoffs in 2022. So I know there's a lot of heat on Daniel Jones. The way I look at last week, I don't view that as a true benching of Daniel Jones for Drew Lock. I think Brian Daboll looked at the scoreboard, realized it wasn't working, and said, you know what? Let's get Drew some reps here in the fourth quarter. It was 21-3. That ballooned to 28-3. The offense the last 2 weeks has scored a total of 10 points. Daniel Jones can't play well at MetLife Stadium. It hasn't happened. Let's get Drew Lock in here. I don't think it was Drew Lock is going to upgrade Daniel Jones. More as I think it was, let's get him out. Let's regroup. Let's get ready for next week. And I think where they're at now, Daniel Jones does give them the best chance to win. Will that always be the case? It's a week-to-week thing. And I think right now, Daniel Jones in this spot needs a big performance against Pittsburgh. It's not going to be easy. Steelers defense is good. They're gritty. It's not going to be an easy place to play. But you know what? If Daniel Jones is going to do it, it's going to be on the road. And I don't believe that Daniel Jones is going to be benched. But I do think that the door is now open. If the Giants lose tonight, then they play Washington, then they play Carolina and Germany. If they lose out, then the injury protection is going to come into play. The injury clause that if Daniel Jones cannot pass a physical on the 5th day of the new league year next March, then he will be guaranteed, I think it's $25 million. It might be 22. But that goes to the cap. It's obviously not what the Giants want if they're moving on from Daniel Jones, which I believe they will ultimately do. And that's where we're at. So get Malik Neighbors involved tonight. Get him involved early. Run the football a little bit. Try to bring some stability to that offensive line early. And then you got to make Russell Wilson make mistakes. You can't let him sit back there and throw the ball 30, 40 yards downfield. And, if he takes 5 shots and he hits 3 of them, well, then you're going to lose the game. You got to force turnovers. This game here reminds me a lot of last year going from in Miami to Buffalo on a Sunday night. Remember when they really got beat up pretty good against Miami, gave up big plays. Daniel Jones was injured. They go to Buffalo on a Sunday night when the Bills were sky high. You had Tyrod Taylor as the quarterback, and the Giants should have won that game. And I think when you look at where this game sits, I expect a big performance for Brian Daboll and this roster. I think this team needs a big performance tonight. And I think you'll get it. I don't know if you're going to get a win because until this offense proves that it can score, I think that's where you're at. I think it'd probably be closer, running backs wise, probably be closer to a 50-50 split between Tyrone Tracy and Devin Singletary. I just think they trust Singletary more in pass protection. Doesn't mean they don't trust Tyrone Tracy, but Singletary could be a good asset in here. One thing to watch, I think the screen game becomes more of a factor for the Giants tonight. I think the Eagles kind of took that away a little bit. I think the Steelers, maybe the Giants come with a little bit different screens, maybe some screens to the tight ends rather than the backs, maybe a wide receiver screen. But you got to be careful with TJ Watt because TJ Watt is outstanding in breaking off his rush and playing the pass and reading things the way they do. So that's where we're at. Appreciate you tuning in. You got plenty of time to listen to this week's episode before tonight's game. And then we will be back with a episode to wrap the game. But we got to see. It's a quick turnaround, getting ready for Washington. So Paul Wood and I will discuss what we're doing as far as the post-game episode. It's going to be real late tonight. We'll see if we can make it happen tonight after the game. If not, we will have an episode this week. We'll wrap this one, and then we'll look ahead to Washington on Sunday at MetLife Stadium. So for Paul Wood, I'm Art Stapleton. Go Yankees. Bring the series back to life, back in the Bronx, because Aaron Judge needs to step up. I think it's pretty crazy what's going on in New York sports the last, really not just tonight and tomorrow, but the last 72 hours and everything that's going on. It's a lot going on, but we appreciate you always being all in with this podcast, with our Giants coverage, and we'll stay all in with you too. So from Pittsburgh, we'll see you tonight on social media and on NorthJersey.com from the place normally known as Heinz Field. Again, appreciate you listening, and we'll catch you tonight after the game.